Hello. Now we have our third panel with the Dean of Natural and Social Sciences, one of the first Chicanos to be a dean here at Cal State LA, so we're very proud of him. The next panel is JEDI, which stands for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. And we'll pass it over to Rene.
Thank you, Victor. And good morning or good afternoon by now to everyone. My name is Rene Vellanoweth. I'm the Dean of the College of Natural and Social Sciences. And I suppose a little bit about myself. I grew up in Whittier, California, and I'm the youngest of 9 children. My parents are from Mexico, so first gen and all that kind of stuff. I failed out of my first 2 years of high school. And my parents were divorced, so I went to live with my father in Pasadena and did a little better, but started my college career at Pasadena City College, which was very important for me. Went to UCLA, and forgive me, UCLA folks, but I should have gone to Cal State LA. It wasn't supported at the time. It was during the Reagan years, and it was sort of tough to be a college student. I had to pay for it all myself. And took a couple years off, did some soul searching, did some traveling, worked hard to save money for graduate school, and enrolled at Cal State LA. And Cal State LA for my master's program in anthropology and archaeology, and it changed my life. I went off to the University of Oregon to get a PhD, taught at Humboldt State University for 7 years. And then as soon as I could, I came back to Cal State LA and I taught in the Department of Anthropology, where I was the chair for 10 years. And just this past June, Jose Gomez, our provost, asked if I wanted to step in to be the interim dean. And of course, I was in New Mexico at the time, vacation with my family. And I thought, what? Sure, I guess. And I did for a variety of reasons. Number one, like Victor said, because we need representation, we need leadership, we need people who will take the mantle, who understand the needs of Latinos and Latinas, and who live the experiences of the students we serve. And knowing that I understood the context and understood much of what our students were going through, I happily accepted the position. We'll see after June if I'm still in this job. I'm going to apply for the permanent job, and I have lots of ideas about how we can help all of our students of all colors and ways of reimagining our college, trying to break down some of the structures that we have, that are in the way of doing some very creative work. So I'm excited to be a moderator for this panel. I've never been a moderator in my life. I suppose not a formal one. And so I asked Victor, well, what do you want me to do? And he said, well, give him 7 to 8 minutes. And so I have my phone here and I have it for 7.5 minutes. It'll be hard for me to interrupt you because I know that you're all eloquent folks, but we have 4 people that are going to be speaking today in the order of Daniel Loera, Cynthia Olivo, Carlos Gutierrez, and then our discussant, our own Dolores, Delgado, Bernal. And so these are all very important people that have all pushed the needle for helping not only Latino students, but for helping all students in California. And so I was first struck by the JEDI Way, and that was very creative: justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. That's the way it goes, but that justice is very important there. So shifting from historically white institution to Hispanic graduating, that's wild. At the dean's office, we have yearbooks, and I look at those yearbooks in the 50s and the 60s, very, very different than what it looks like today. I was a student here at Cal State LA in the 90s, very different from what it looks like today. And we are making strides. Some of the graphs that, and again, please forgive me, I don't mean to get on the UC, but UC has a lot of work to do. The CSU still has a lot of work to do, but we are making progress, as you could see by the number of PhDs in attendance, by the number of very important, eloquent people on these panels. And so I will be quiet, and I will now introduce our first speaker. And forgive me, I'm reading. Dr. Daniel Loera is Director of Multicultural Affairs, Center for Multicultural Services at University of Verne, or is it La Verne? I heard that this morning. and very important. There's a lot of work, and I don't want to go on with the bio. And so, Dr. Loera, the floor is yours. And 7.5 minutes, and I don't know what I'll do. I'll interrupt in some way or another.
I appreciate your introduction, Rene, and also what you shared about your own story. I think it speaks very much to I think what a lot of us have in common. And I realize the time frame is short. So I'm going to attempt to also share my screen, if I may. And what I'm going to do is let's see if I don't have the same issue that was presented earlier. It's smaller than I wanted here. And I don't know why it is. Well, I have it on another screen here, big, but it's not what I want. I'm gonna, if it's okay, I'll proceed to not waste any time with this.
Yeah, I think it looks good. Go for it.
I love the title, and it's a play on words, the JEDI Way. Why does it matter to me? I want to center this presentation on the idea of what it means to be our authentic selves as we enter into predominantly white institutions. I was thinking about the power of the words at the beginning of the now famous poem by Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez, Yo soy Joaquin. It captures the unequivocal expression of authentic grounding, whether it's in Spanish or another language or dialect. Announcing one's presence is self-validating and a stepping stone to observe what is missing from the space or the spaces we occupy, in particular as you enter the academic setting. Growing up, all I knew was the neighborhood and the protocols of the neighborhood. One of the biggest battles for the first 2 years of my college-going experience was that I did not want to give up my khakis. Keeping my sense of self was that important to me, and it was directly tied to how I presented myself. I knew the khakis were layered with meaning for others, that they perceived individuals who wore khakis a certain way, not to mention the accompanying Pendleton shirt. As important as my identity was when I entered college, I soon realized that not only was I that person I thought I was, but I was also so much more. When I entered college, I was fearful of two things: losing who I was because I would take on another way of being, and two, distancing myself from my family and community because of becoming someone else that I was not. Laura Rendon, in quoting Gloria Ansaldúa, refers to this experience of liminality in Empantla. For Rendon, the in-between space, students caught and pulled in one or more operating contexts, is quite pervasive. We see this reference as part of Yoso's community cultural wealth model, where the elements of our cultural upbringing are sublimated with the new spaces we occupy. We talk about the importance of belongingness at our respective campuses, but if belonging means that I would distance myself from who I am, then I enter into the very experience I was hoping to avoid. Don't get me wrong, we want students to open their worldview and to see the myriad of ways they can be in this world. Education for me was primarily a liberating experience. On my wall at the University of Laverne, I have four diplomas hanging. One day I had a professor kind of whisper to me that he was kind of embarrassed that I had my high school diploma up there. I had missed an average, and I shared with him how important that particular diploma was and why. I had missed an average of 30 to 35 days a semester throughout high school. My last semester, I went to 3 high schools to get my 40 credits I needed to graduate. Why do I share this? The reason is, when I entered college, I had a newfound ganas to pursue learning, and I knew that I had to play catch up because I had not taken full advantage of high school, but I had ganas. This question, or being questioned, also speaks to the assumptions we have about students and their level of preparation as they enter higher education settings. So I would say, guáchale, pitrucha. I think all of you have heard about bystander training. Bystander training says, if you see something, say something. We are all bystanders to the spaces we enter into. By spaces, I mean the campuses. What have you noticed is missing? Have you ever said it out loud? When I first came to the University of Laverne, and this is where I refer to the bystander training, not necessarily focused on observing security threats, but on missing cultural, familial support or threats to be a welcoming community or threats of being a space where one could be lost. There is a violence of omission. To frame it as violence seems strong, yet the absence of supports that engage me fully and can be wrought with violence, or at minimal can dash my dreams, can rip the spirit out of me. To me, this is violence, to have one's dreams and spirit ripped out of them. Bystander training, see something, say something, do something. If you see something is missing, there's a reason you're seeing it. It is imperative to say something. And if nothing is done, you must do something. For that matter, I noticed we didn't have supports to support other affinity cultural groups as well, and it was imperative that I address it. Recognizing what is missing from your campus can come from several perspectives. First, it can come from one's own lived experience and memory of supports you either wish you had or directly experienced. Secondly, it comes from your knowledge about what support exists on other campuses. Do the research. And third, it comes from your engagement with other organizations doing critical work of understanding the movement from PWIs to enrolling HSIs to serving HSIs to thriving and graduating HSIs. This is where I will speak briefly about AHISE, Association of Hispanic Serving Institution Educators, who support practitioners through sharing best practices, collaboration, engagement, and professional learning. There is also a community of proxies website that details the institutes AHISE offers at least every 2 months: Grantsmanship, Student Leadership Retreat, Project Management, Data Institute, and Writing Institute. But also the importance to be in collaboration with relationship with HACU, Excelencia in Education, SACNAS, AHI, and others. Ultimately, if we are grounded in disaggregated data, it will become apparent to us that we're being called to respond in a way that challenges us beyond our comfort zone. In the words of Dr. Bettina Love, in our advocacy work, when we see something is missing, we need to not only say something, but we need to do something. And this is where we are called to be JEDI, in the other use of the word, or co-conspirators in the quest to address inequities. Because in the end, yo soy Joaquin, yo soy JEDI in multiple form, yo soy Daniel, and you are my brother and you are my sister. And thank you. I'm going to cut it short. Thank you very much for that.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Loera. That was very poetic and very moving. Really appreciate that. And you're right, the JEDI Way, it's a play of words, and I just thought that was brilliant. And the way you encompassed it and what we're talking about today adds extra flavor to that. Okay, I'm gonna stop that. So our second speaker, Dr. Cynthia Olivo, is Assistant Superintendent, Vice President of Student Services for Pasadena City College, important to me, where she is responsible for overall leadership and planning, organizing and directing all student services and support programs. Dr. Olivo, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the invitation. And today I'll be focusing on an organization that myself and my colegas created in the California Community College system. And it is called Golegas. And to us, this is one way that we embody JEDI, justice, justicia, equity, diversity, and inclusion. A little bit about colegas, you know, we embody in Lakesh, tú eres mi otro yo, right? This idea that we have to be there for each other, especially if we're going to do things like dismantle whiteness in our system. We focus in colegas on creating opportunities for comunidad, creating brave spaces, claiming our poder, and offering la escalera. If you'd like to learn more about some of our services, I encourage you to follow us on social media and also to check out our website. We are affiliated with the National Community College Hispanic Council. A little bit about why Golegas became into existence, why we created it. You know, Latinx students make up 45% of California community college students. And to us, it's extremely important to make sure we are represented at every level. Just to give you a little bit of information, the top 5 community college districts with the largest percentage of Latinx students are Imperial Valley, Rio Hondo, College of the Desert, Cerritos, and College of the Sequoias. Now, Colegas, we found the information from the Campaign for College of Opportunity to be really a call to action. You know, here is data from 2016-17 about how many of our students are enrolled across the 115 community colleges. But when you look at both tenured and non-tenured faculty data, you'll see the majority of our students experience education from a white perspective. And senior leadership is also predominantly white. In Colegas, we wanted to change this. And this is why we organized and created this amazing organization that is here to support us and our community, and also to ensure that we're bringing allies from other communities on board with us. That being said, I do want to mention that our students are doing very well in California community colleges. Of our 140,000 awards that were completed, 45.6% were earned by Latinx students. We are also successfully earning associate degrees for transfer. So we need to keep making our policies really actionable and put in place to reduce those barriers to transfer. 50.1% of our associate degrees in the States were awarded to Latinx students. In California community colleges, we have this vision for success, and goal number 3 is to reduce the average units that our students earn who complete degrees to 79 units. So you can see here, our students, we need to make sure that our system is helping our students achieve this goal. And we believe that if Golegas helps our comunidad to become the faculty, the senior administrators, the decision makers at the table, we can make a difference in this regard. I do want to make a mention of where I work. I'm at Pasadena City College, and we've been working intentionally at ensuring our college is Hispanic serving, Latinx serving, not just enrolling. I'm very proud that last year and this year, we're in the top 5 in the nation of awarding degrees to Latinx students. And you can check out our new website that launched this year, where we describe what it means to be an HSI and embrace servingness. In regards to Colegas, what we do is we highlight our stories, our information, the leaders in our system who are chancellors, our presidents, and we center our research. Our voice is often left to the side, and Colegas centers everything we do as a Latinx community. I encourage you to check us out and join Colegas. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Olivo. Again, leadership. It points to leadership. It's like we've opened the doors. Our children are coming. They're getting educated, and now we need to make inroads in leadership. And here at Cal State LA, over the past 5 years, I've seen a change in that. I've seen where William Covino and Jose Gomez have intentionally tried to make a difference and gone after and hired people of color. And that's so important for our students to see leaders in ways like you mentioned and others have mentioned, because they can see a little bit of themselves in us. And that's what we need to do. We need to represent. So our last speaker of this panel before the discussant, somebody I know well, somebody who teaches or taught, it's crazy to say that, with my brother, Beto. They're known as Robert on campus. We know him as Beto. Dr. Carlos Gutierrez, University President's Distinguished Professor of Chemistry, Emeritus at Cal State LA. Gutierrez research and research training efforts have secured $100 million or more in grants to the university. He was the founding director of the MORE programs and has done so much for this campus for so long. And he's a hero here. And it's my brother has talked and said great things before I even was a professor here. And Dr. Gutierrez has paved the way for many of us, and we really appreciate you spending some time from your retired life and joining us today. Dr. Gutierrez.
Well, thank you very much. Let me share my my screen with you all. Like a good Latino, I misheard how much time I had, so I wrote a 15-minute talk, and but that's okay. We'll get through it all. You know, and I titled this talk, Cal State LA, the first HSI in California, but still an emerging HSI. Cal State LA is a really important institution. The first Department of Chicano Studies was founded here in 1968. We were the first public four-year institution on the West Coast to qualify for full membership in HACU, the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, the first CSU designated as an HSI. Indeed, the first on the West Coast. The enrollment currently this fall is 69.8% Hispanic, okay? And so that super majority really puts Hispanic students, they're not the tail that's wagging the dog, they're the dog that's wagging the dog. However, in the recent past, Cal State LA has been oddly tentative and uncomfortable with its HSI identity. Administrators told us, well, if we embrace an HSI designation and become deliberately Hispanic serving, what would the 30% that is not Latinx think? You know, and frankly, this is leftover thinking from making whiteness normative. Whiteness was normative and everybody else was to be managed. Let me just throw out a few positives that have happened recently. Our graduation rate has indeed increased. And if you'll notice there, the Latinx population, women at 53.9, men at 43.9. It's increased for just about every group, but realize that these numbers are still pretty modest. We have phenomenal gaps between men and women. And so things that we have to attend to. A positive is that President Covina is a member of the Excelencia Presidents for Latino Student Success. Negative-ish is that Cal State LA is not, even though we were the first in the state, have not achieved the seal of Excelencia, although 7 of our sister institutions have. A negative is that 58%, in a Gallup poll, 58% of our alumni do not know that Cal State LA is a Hispanic serving institution. So CLUA, the Chican X Latinx University Association, we wrote up a brown paper and presented it to the Cal State LA leadership in the fall of 1919. I'm not going to read that right now, with recommendations on how to really make this a Hispanic serving institution. And then COVID-19 hit. But let me tell you that I've never been more optimistic about the future of Cal State LA, with President Covino on the Excelencia list of presidents, with Provost Jose Gomez, with Vice President Octavio Villalpando, with interim Dean Rene Vellanoweth, with Dean Emily Allen of the College of Engineering, Computer Science and Technology, we have a bunch of allies that are in strategic places. The first recommendation is we've got to embrace Cal State LA's identity as an HSI. And not only do that, we have to train people about what this means. Just a brand is meaningless unless it is taken to heart by administrators, by faculty, by staff. Also, you know, people have talked about what do we do in Hispanic serving institutions when we actually serve a very broad population of groups. This is not a zero-sum game, ladies and gentlemen. We can be true to every one of our students group, and we would be negligent if we did not. We can certainly do this through equity-mindedness and targeted universalism. This is being done by others, and we can do it here. We have to create a campus climate where all students know that they belong. We are not about creating a welcoming environment or give students a sense of belonging. They must know that they belong. The reason I think this is important, and I'm a little down on the welcoming stuff, is you welcome the stranger. That's no way to treat our students. We must embrace our students so that they know that they belong. Faculty, we need more Latino faculty. There's just no two ways about it. The top row on that of tables is a couple of years old, and you'll notice that the ratio of students to tenure track faculty member, Latino faculties, was a ridiculous 241. There is no group almost by an order of magnitude that is that underserved. So even if you include adjuncts, it's still 50 to 1. It's gotten better, and so I want to congratulate the university. We're up to 89 faculty members. Yes, President Cody Vino said we were amongst the most diverse colleges in the nation, but that's starting from a very low base. We need to be overall better. WASC actually told us to get to become better. I'm not going to talk about 5 leadership development programs. Absolutely, we need to grow the number of homegrown administrators, folks that have already made a commitment to Cal State LA, to the improvement of Cal State LA. I don't mean to be harsh, but I think we've been better served by homegrown administrators than transient administrators who are with us for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then they're off to be transient at other institutions. We must also prepare students for leadership. The bachelor's degree is not enough. Yes, I recognize that it's the first step, but if we're going to train leaders, they have to be able to compete in graduate programs, law schools, medical schools, PhD programs, you name it. This is, let me boast a little bit about the more programs, because that's precisely what we are all about. I'm not going to tell you some accolades, some national accolades or accolades from the UC system, but just to point out that in the last 20 years that the more programs have been in existence, 207 students, alumni of these programs completed the PhD. And please look at that table on the right where it says race, ethnicity, and notice Hispanic and Latinx students. They're 69% of the 207. African Americans, 13.5. That's 3 to 4 times their enrollment at the university. Filipinos at 7.2. Caucasian and whites, 3.9. American Indians, who we completely forget about, except thanking them at the beginning of every conference on how we stole their land. They've gotten 2.4% of the PhDs. Asians 3.4, Pacific Islanders 0.5. Let me just go through this is really fast. Look at all those PhDs, 207 through September of this year. Never in the history of Cal State LA have we had so many minority folks or even Cal State LA folks earning PhDs. And ladies and gentlemen, there are still 155 in PhD programs right now. We have the expertise on campus. We know what to do. We just need to generalize it to other institutions. But what about other areas of the university? For example, there's a real shortage of Spanish-speaking, culturally aware physicians and dentists in the greater East Side, one of Cal State LA's principal service areas. We are an anchor institution. Should we not be responsive to community needs and perhaps develop a formal training programs to prepare more Cal State LA students to be competitive for admission to medical and dental schools in the way that we've done for folks that are interested in STEM PhDs through the more programs. The last recommendation was that we would that the provost would set up a task force on Latinx student success to address these recommendations. Now that COVID is at least waning, let's get back on track on these recommendations. And I'll leave you with a quote from Joe Biden. It says, "Don't tell me what you value. Show me your budget, and I'll tell you what you value." So with that, thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Gutierrez. So we'll move on to our discussant, Dr. Dolores Delgado Bernal. She's the interim associate dean of the College of Ethnic Studies at Cal State LA and served as chair of the Department of Chicano, Latino Studies from 2018 to 2021. Her scholarship draws from critical race studies and Chicano feminist studies to investigate educational equity and inequity. Doctor.
Thank you, Rene. Let me just say this is an amazing and awesome panel, and I want to frame, and I know we're all in this real tight time frame, but I want to frame the comments of Dr. Cynthia, Dr. Daniel, and Dr. Carlos, coming back to something that was said earlier, the question that was asked earlier, that two questions that intersect with what was said what was shared with us just now. I heard Dr. Edward Bush earlier say, what kind of students do we want to graduate? That is so important. And I also heard Dr. Octavio Villalpando say, how do we ensure Latinx students graduate with a grounded cultural sense of their identities and the skills to contribute to their communities of origin? Those kinds of skills are political, they're activist, they're academic. And basically what I hear both of them asking connects to what we just heard, which is the idea that we want students who can dismantle systems of inequities, dismantle whiteness, and as my colleague in Pan-African Studies says, not combat anti-Blackness, but actually be pro-Black. And I think what I heard here was from each person that is indeed possible, and what it means to actually be graduating Latinx students. Dr. Daniel gave a beautiful, what I would say, testimonial in terms of sharing that personal narrative around being our authentic selves, and pointed to that notion, Ansaldua's notion of Pantla, that in-between space some of us experience, but the idea that if we truly belong, we won't have that same sense of in-betweenness when we come onto a HSI campus. I loved in terms of bringing in Betita Love's work around co-conspirators. That's what we want to be, and that goes back to what Carlos said, which is it's not a zero-sum game. And if we're going to truly serve Latinx students and graduate Latinx students, we want to do so as co-conspirators with all other marginalized groups. I saw Dr. Alejandro Villalpando post earlier about class, because this really is important. What we're talking about is all of our students of color on this campus, or majority, come from poor or working class families. And so it's not a zero-sum game when we create policies and practices. Dr. Cynthia gave us an actual concrete example, colegas, of action that we can create and to be that kind of co-conspirator. I think I heard her say that we embody justice and we embody in la quech. And if you embody in la quech, then you literally are those co-conspirators for whether those be our Pacific Islander students, our Indigenous, our American Indian students, our Black students. Again, not a zero-sum game, as Carlos pointed out.